The sky was turning orange when a cowboy named Tom rode across the empty land. He had been on the trail since sunrise, and now he was tired, hungry, and completely lost. His horse Star walked slowly, her hooves kicking small clouds of dust behind her. Tom looked around again, hoping he would finally see something familiar. He saw nothing but dry grass, long shadows, and endless plains that looked the same in every direction. Tom was a calm and patient man, but being lost this far from town made him uneasy. He had taken what he thought was a shortcut in the morning, planning to reach the river before night. Instead, he had wandered deeper into old land that few people visited. The wind felt colder and stronger as it moved across the plains. Star shook her head as if she could also sense the loneliness of the place. The sun dropped lower and Tom knew he needed shelter soon. He could sleep outside if he must, but he had seen dark clouds building on the horizon. Rain on the plains could turn soft ground to mud within minutes. He patted Star's neck and whispered that they needed to keep moving. He hoped they might find a tree line or a hill, anything that could offer cover from the night. After another hour of riding, Tom noticed a group of tall pine trees in the distance. Most trees in this area were short, but these stood close together like a small forest. The sight gave him a little hope. Where there were trees, there might be a stream or an old campsite. He nudged Star forward and made his way toward them. When he reached the trees, he noticed something strange. At first he thought it was just a shadow, but as he came closer, he saw a small wooden cabin hidden between the trunks. It looked like it had been built many years ago. Some boards were cracked, and the porch leaned to one side, but the cabin still stood strong enough to give shelter. Tom stopped for a moment and watched it carefully. He wanted to be sure no one lived inside. He listened but heard nothing except the wind moving through branches. No voices, no footsteps, no smoke from the chimney. Star shifted her weight and snorted quietly. Tom felt her nervous movement and frowned. Animals always sensed things faster than people. He checked the saddle straps and took a deep breath. Even if the cabin felt strange, it was the best place for shelter tonight. He guided Star to a small tree beside the cabin and tied her reins around a branch. She pawed the ground and shook her head again. Tom rubbed her neck, trying to comfort her. He walked to the cabin door and pushed it open. The old hinges gave a long rusty creak that echoed through the quiet woods. Inside the cabin was dusty and dim. Light from the open door revealed a small room with broken furniture scattered around. A table lay on its side, one of its legs missing. Torn curtains hung from the windows. Cobwebs stretched from corner to corner. It looked like no one had lived there for many years. Tom stepped inside and felt the wooden floor shift slightly under his boots. He looked around with careful eyes. He checked behind the door, then the corners, then the space under the windows. He wanted to be sure the cabin truly was empty. Everything looked abandoned and forgotten. Dust lay thick on every surface. Even the air smelled old and dry. He was about to step back outside when something in the far corner caught his attention. A wooden chest sat near the wall. It looked very different from the rest of the room. While everything else was cracked and faded, the chest looked nearly new. The wood was smooth and clean. The metal lock shined in the faint light. Tom narrowed his eyes. It did not make sense for a new chest to be inside such an old cabin. He walked toward it slowly. The air felt heavier with every step he took. Star outside made a soft, uneasy sound. Tom paused and listened. The forest remained silent. Only the cabin seemed to hold its breath. Tom reached the chest and knelt down. He touched the surface gently. The wood felt warm under his hand. Warm wood inside a cold cabin made no sense. He sat back slightly. He looked at the lock and noticed that it was closed but not fully snapped shut. It looked like someone had locked it but had not pushed the latch tightly, almost as if someone had left it that way on purpose. Tom looked around the room once more. There were no signs of recent footprints in the dust, no signs of campfires or cooking, no blankets or supplies, nothing that suggested someone had been here lately. Yet the chest looked completely out of place. He placed both hands on the lid. He breathed slowly and lifted it open. Inside the chest lay a bundle wrapped in clean cloth. The cloth was white and looked untouched by dust or dirt. Tom felt a strange shiver as he leaned closer. He slowly unfolded the cloth. Each fold revealed a little more of what was inside. When he uncovered the last fold, he froze. Inside the bundle lay a small wooden box with carvings on all sides. The carvings were detailed and delicate. Stars, waves, mountains, and symbols he did not recognize. The box was no bigger than his two hands put together. Tom hesitated. Something about the box did not feel normal. It felt important, as if it held a story that had been waiting a long time. He placed his fingers on the lid of the carved box. It was smooth and warm, just like the chest. He lifted it slowly. The box opened without a sound. Inside it lay a single item, a round stone, smooth and shining slightly even without light. The surface was pale silver. When Tom held it up, he realized it was not just a stone. It had markings, thin lines that looked like circles within circles. The stone felt warm in his hands, almost like it was alive. Tom felt a strange pressure in the room. The air grew heavier. Star outside stomped nervously. The wind around the cabin became still. Tom stood with the stone in his hand and felt his heart beat faster. He turned the stone gently. The markings on the surface glowed faintly. He blinked, unsure if his eyes were playing tricks. But the glow grew brighter. Light spread along the carved lines like slow-moving water. Tom stepped back, alarmed, but he could not drop the stone. It felt connected to him, warm and steady. The glow spread across the stone until it shined like soft moonlight. Then he noticed something even stranger. The air around him began to move inward, as if being pulled toward the stone. Dust lifted from the floor. Old cobwebs drifted from the walls. Curtains moved without wind. Tom tried to step back again, but his feet felt rooted. A soft hum filled the cabin. It was gentle but deep, like a distant vibration in the earth. The wooden walls trembled. The floorboards shook lightly. Tom gripped the stone tightly. The glow brightened until the whole cabin looked different. The broken furniture looked sharper in the light. The shadows vanished from the corners. Even the dust in the air sparkled. Then the glow from the stone pushed outward like a wave. It filled the cabin with a sudden burst of light. For a brief moment, Tom could not see anything at all. When the light faded, he looked around in shock. He was no longer alone in the cabin. Standing in the far corner was a figure he had not seen before. The person had not entered. The door had not moved. Yet the figure stood there, silent and still. Tom felt a cold shiver move across his back. The stone in his hand dimmed again, returning to its soft silver color. The cabin stayed quiet, except for Star outside, who now made restless sounds. Tom stared at the figure. The figure stared back. Nothing about this moment made sense. He had entered a forgotten cabin, and now something impossible had happened. The figure took one slow step forward, and the old floor creaked beneath their foot. Tom tightened his grip on the stone. The air felt tense, as if the cabin itself waited for what would happen next. That was how Tom learned that he was not only lost on the plains. He had stepped into something far older, something hidden, something that had been waiting. The figure took another step toward him. Tom did not breathe. The cabin did not move. The stone grew warm again, and the night outside grew darker. Tom stood frozen as the strange figure took another slow step from the far corner of the cabin. The light outside had fallen into deep night, but inside the room everything looked unusually bright, because the silver stone in Tom's hand still gave off a faint glow. The warm light touched the dusty walls and made the old wood look alive. Dust floated through the air like tiny sparks. The figure paused halfway across the room. It was a person, but at first Tom could not tell if it was a man or a woman. They wore a long dark coat that looked older than the cabin itself. Their hair hung over their face in soft strands that covered their expression. They did not hold a weapon. They did not look hurt. They just stood and watched him with calm and steady stillness. Tom took a careful breath. His voice came out low but controlled as he spoke. "Who are you?" The figure did not answer at once. Instead, they turned their head slightly toward the stone in his hand, as if the stone itself mattered more than Tom. Then they looked back at him and finally spoke in a soft, clear voice. "I am someone who has been waiting for that stone to wake again." The words carried no threat. They sounded patient, almost sad. Tom took a step back anyway. The cabin door was behind him. If he needed to run, he could reach it in a second. But something told him he was not in danger. Not yet. Tom held the stone up slightly. "What is this thing?" The figure moved slowly and raised both hands to show they meant no harm. They stepped a little closer. When the light of the stone touched their face, Tom finally saw their features. It was a young woman with calm brown eyes. Her face looked gentle but also tired, as if she had lived through long years without rest. "My name is Mira," she said quietly. "I came to this cabin many nights ago. I came looking for the stone you now hold. I thought it would never open again." Tom blinked. "Open again? What does that mean?" She nodded slowly. "That stone is not like other stones. It holds old power, not the kind that hurts, the kind that remembers. It wakes only when someone touches it with a clear mind." Tom frowned. His mind was far from clear. He was lost, tired and confused. Yet the stone had opened in his hands. He wondered what that meant. He looked at Mira. "How did you get inside the cabin?" "You were not here when I entered." Mira lowered her gaze. "When the stone opened, I returned. I am tied to it. Not trapped, but connected. I waited for someone who would find it without fear." Tom had many questions. Too many, but he kept his voice steady. "Why were you waiting in here? Why not take the stone yourself?" Mira approached the chest and looked inside it with quiet focus. Her fingers traced the edge of the wood as if she remembered placing it there long ago. "I could not open the stone," she whispered. "Only someone chosen by its memory can do that. I came here because the stone called to me long before you arrived. I stayed because I had nowhere else to go, and because I believed someone would come one day to wake it." Tom tried to understand her words. They sounded honest but also mysterious. He took a seat on the old chair that lay half broken on its side. He turned it upright and lowered himself slowly. The floor creaked under the weight. Myra remained standing near the chest. The glow of the stone reflected on her coat. Star outside snorted again and poured the dirt. Tom glanced at the door but kept his attention on Myra. "Tell me the truth," he said calmly. "What does this stone do? Why did it light up like that?" Myra lifted her eyes and held his gaze for a long moment. She took a breath and spoke gently. Long ago there was a man who lived far from the towns. He protected people who had no one to help them. He carried this stone with him and kept it safe. The stone responded to his thoughts. It showed him danger when danger came near. It guided him when the path turned dark. But the man grew old, and one day he hid the stone in this cabin so no one would use it in the wrong way. Only someone with a true heart could wake it again. Tom tightened his fingers around the stone. The warm pulse inside it felt steady and soft. Myra continued. When the stone glows, it means it has chosen. It does not obey the person who holds it. It guides them. It shows what must be known. It leads them where they must. Goten looked down at the silver surface and the faint lines that circled across it. He felt a slow push behind his ribs. A strange feeling that the stone recognized him even if he did not understand how. But why me? He asked. I am just a cowboy who lost his way. Myra shook her head gently. Not just a cowboy. You touched the stone without fear. You opened it without greed. And you listened to your own sense even when you were unsure. That is why it woke for you. Tom looked around the cabin again. The broken furniture, the dusty floor, the shadows that still moved despite the light. Everything felt different now that Myra was here and the stone was alive. The cabin felt less abandoned and more like a place waiting for a story to begin. Myra walked toward him, slowly, and sat on the floor a few feet away from him. She kept her hands folded and looked at the lantern-shaped glow of the stone. There is something else, she said. I must tell you. Tom nodded. Go ahead. The stone woke you because something is coming, something that has been asleep for a long time. The man who protected this land feared it. That is why he hid the stone. He knew the day would come when someone would need it. Again Tom felt a chill move down his back. What is coming? Myra looked toward the window where night covered the forest in quiet darkness. Something that watches from the hills. Something that searches for the one who holds the stone. Tom's hand tightened. He looked toward the door. Star shifted restlessly as if she sensed movement outside the cabin. Myra spoke softly but firmly. Do not drop the stone. It will keep you safe. But you cannot stay in this cabin for long. Once the stone wakes, the watcher becomes aware. Tom rose to his feet slowly. A sound drifted from outside. It was not wind. It was not Star. It was a soft, distant thud as if something heavy stepped on the ground. Myra rose to. Her voice was steady, though her eyes held concern. We must leave soon. The watcher has awakened. Tom's heartbeat quickened. He had traveled through storms and crossed long plains, but he had never faced anything like this. He walked toward the door and opened it a little. The night outside was deep and silent. The trees stood tall and dark. The air felt heavy, like the moment before lightning strikes. Tom looked back at Myra. She nodded calmly. The stone called you, she said. Now you must follow where it leads. Tom took a breath and stepped outside. Star turned her head quickly toward the darkness behind the trees. Something moved there. A shape, a shadow. A presence too large to belong to human or animal. Tom held the stone close. It pulsed warm against his palm. Myra stepped beside him. Stay close, she whispered. It is coming from the hills. Tom tightened the reins and looked into the night. The watcher had begun its approach, and the real journey was only starting for him. Tom stood outside the cabin with the silver stone warm in his hand. The forest around him was dark and silent. The tall pine trees looked like they were holding their breath. The night felt thick, almost heavy, and Tom could sense something moving far beyond the tree line. His horse, Star, shifted her weight and pulled at the reins gently. She felt it too. Myra stepped out of the cabin beside him. Her long coat swayed in the light breeze. She looked calm, but her eyes watched the forest with careful focus. She knew the watcher was somewhere out there. She had known about it long before Tom ever arrived at the cabin. Tom whispered to her, "Tell me what exactly this watcher is." Myra kept her gaze on the woods. "It is not a person and not an animal. It is something old that once moved across this land. Long ago it was pushed back into the hills by the man who guarded this stone. But it waits for the stone to wake again. When it wakes, the watcher begins to hunt." Tom swallowed. "Hunt what?" Myra answered in a soft, steady voice. "Hunt the one holding the stone. It wants to keep the stone from guiding anyone. It fears the light inside. It fears the light inside it." Tom looked at the stone in his hand. It glowed gently like soft moonlight. He tightened his fingers around it. He had no idea how he, a simple cowboy, had become part of something so strange. A distant thud echoed from the hills again. It was slow but strong. A step, then another. The sound was deep, like something pressing hard into the earth. Tom felt Star tense, and he stepped toward her. "We cannot stay here," Myra said. "The cabin is no longer safe. Once the watcher reaches these woods, the cabin will not stop it." Tom nodded. He untied Star and placed a hand on her back. "Where do we go?" he asked. Myra pointed toward the east. "Beyond these trees is a deep valley. At the end of that valley is a narrow pass. There is a place there where the stone can show you its purpose. But we must reach it before the watcher reaches us." Tom helped Myra climb onto Star behind him. She held onto the saddle and kept her eyes on the forest. Tom took a long breath, guided Star forward, and moved into the trees. As they rode, the forest closed around them with tall shadows. Pine needles covered the ground in a thick blanket that muffled the sound of Star's hooves. The wind drifted between the branches with a cold whisper. Tom followed a faint path he could barely see. Mira guided him with quiet instructions, pointing when the path curved or dipped. After some distance, Mira spoke again. The watcher follows the warmth of the stone. It senses when the stone wakes. That is why we must keep moving. The stone will guide you if danger draws closer. Tom looked down at the glowing stone. The lines on its surface pulsed like a heartbeat. He wondered if it could truly sense danger. He wondered if it could really guide him. He hoped it could because he felt the pressure of something behind them. Something heavy. Something slow but steady. They rode deeper into the forest. Branches brushed against Tom's coat. The air smelled of damp earth. A rustling sound came from the trees behind them. It was faint but real. Myra heard it too. Do not look back. Just right. Tom pressed his heels into Star's sides and she picked up speed. The path grew narrower. The trees grew thicker. The forest felt alive around them with soft movements in the dark. Another rustling sound followed. Leaves shook. A heavy breath drifted through the night. Tom felt the hairs on his arms rise. He held the stone tighter. The stone warmed again. Then it grew hotter. Tom felt a pulse of heat move across his palm. Myra saw it and nodded. The watcher is near. The stone will warn you before it strikes. Tom wanted to ask what the watcher looked like, but he decided he might not want to know yet. He focused on guiding Star through the trees as fast as her legs would allow. They broke through a line of thick bushes and entered a wider clearing. Moonlight touched the open ground. Ahead of them he saw the valley Myra had spoken of. The land dropped down in a broad slope. Tall cliffs rose on both sides. The valley stretched deep into the distance like a long, dark river of grass. At the very end of it, Tom could see a narrow cut between two cliff walls. That must have been the pass. Tom breathed out slowly. We can reach that. Mira shook her head. Not unless we hurry. The watcher moves faster when it comes into open land. Tom did not wait. He kicked his heels again and Star galloped down the slope. The cold air brushed past his face. Mira gripped the saddle tightly but did not panic. She watched the valley entrance and kept her voice steady. Keep straight. Do not slow down. The watcher will try to turn you. Tom wanted to ask what that meant, but before he could speak, the stone flared brightly in his hand. Light burst across his palm. The air around them vibrated. Star almost stumbled. What does that mean? Tom shouted. It means it is right behind us, Mira cried. A deep, heavy sound rolled through the air. It was not a roar. It was not a growl. It was something older and deeper. A sound that came from the earth itself. The watcher had stepped into the clearing behind them. Tom could not stop himself. He turned his head for one quick glance. He saw a shadow. Tall, massive, taller than any person, darker than night. He could not see a face. He could not see arms. He could only see the huge shape moving toward them like a silent storm. Star panicked and ran harder. Tom held the reins tight and leaned forward. The ground shook beneath them. The stone glowed brighter. Myra called out, "Do not turn. Keep straight. The watcher tries to bend the path around you." Tom did not understand how something could bend a path, but as he looked ahead he noticed something strange. The valley floor seemed to curve slightly. The direction forward no longer looked straight. His eyes tried to follow a path that shifted like water. Mira grabbed his arm. The stone will show the true path. Hold it up. Tom raised the stone high. The glow spread outward and cast a wide light across the valley. In that light the land changed. The bending grass straightened. The twisting shadows moved aside. The valley became clear again. Tom urged Star forward. Another heavy step echoed from behind them. The watcher was closer. Tom felt the air tremble with its presence. Mira pointed ahead. The pass is not far. Once we reach it, the watcher cannot follow. The walls are too narrow. Tom looked forward and saw the sharp cut in the cliffs growing closer. He could see the stone walls rise like giant hands. He could feel the air change as the land narrowed. The watcher let out a deep sound that shook the ground. The shadow behind them lengthened. Tom could feel its presence almost at his back. The stone burned warm in his hand, but he did not let go. He held it up high. The glow grew brighter and brighter until the whole valley looked like it was filled with soft white light. Star pushed herself harder, stretching her legs as fast as she could. Tom gripped the reins tightly. Myra leaned forward to balance them. The cliffs approached. The pass opened. Just a few more seconds. A heavy sound exploded behind them. The ground cracked. Tom did not look back, but he felt the watcher reach out toward the light. They crossed into the pass. The moment Star entered the narrow cut between the cliffs, the air shifted. A sudden stillness fell. The heavy steps stopped. The trembling in the ground faded. Tom pulled Star to a slow walk. His heart raced in his chest. Myra breathed out with relief. The watcher had stopped at the edge of the pass. Tom turned slightly and looked back. The massive shadow stood at the entrance of the valley. It could not move forward. It could not cross the narrow walls. It watched them silently. Mira rested a hand on Tom's shoulder. You did well. The stone led you true. Tom looked ahead. The pass stretched deeper into the cliffs. The land was quiet and safe for now, but the journey was far from over. The stone pulsed again in his hand, as if telling him the next step would be even more important than the last. The narrow pass between the cliffs felt cold and silent as Tom guided Star forward. The stone in his hand glowed with a soft pulse that helped light the path. The walls on both sides rose high above him, rough and uneven, shaped by old wind and older time. Myra rode behind him on the saddle, holding the edge of his coat to stay balanced. Her eyes studied the cliffs as if she had walked this place long ago. Tom looked behind them once more. The Watcher still stood at the entrance of the pass, but it could not enter. It remained motionless, like a giant shadow carved into the earth. Even though it could not reach them now, Tom felt a chill when he saw how silently it watched them. Mira spoke softly. Do not give it your attention. The Watcher stays there until it senses you again. We must stay deep inside the pass so its reach becomes weak. Tom nodded and turned back. The path ahead bent slightly to the right. The glow of the stone brushed against the cliff walls and the light revealed ancient carvings. The shapes looked like long lines and circles that connected together like a map. Some carvings were faded while others looked sharper. Tom slowed start and reached out to touch one of the carvings. What is this? Mira leaned forward to look. These were made by people who lived here before the towns were built. They knew about the stone. They knew about the Watcher. They created these marks so the one chosen by the stone could follow the true path. Tom studied the carvings again. They reminded him of the lines inside the stone. He wondered if they were connected. Mira pointed at a symbol shaped like two circles touching at the edge. That one means the path will divide soon. We must choose the right side. The left leads into a dead end where the cliffs close in. The right leads to the place I told you about. Tom guided Star forward again. The air felt different here. The wind did not reach this far. The sound of hooves echoed against the stone walls. Even their breathing felt louder. Tom noticed that when he looked up, the sky was only a narrow strip of dark blue. Stars twinkled faintly above them. The stone warmed again. Myra looked at it. It senses something ahead. Stay alert. They continued down the path until they reached a fork where the path split into two directions. The left path dipped downward into deep shadow. The right path rose gently and curved between brighter stones that reflected the light from the glowing stone in Tom's hand. Mira whispered, "Go right." Tom tugged the reins and led Star up the right path. The ground here was smoother. The sound of hooves felt softer. Tom glanced at the stone again. The pulse inside it was steady and warm. After a moment, Myra spoke again. The Watcher cannot enter this place, but something else can move here. The old stories say the Path of Echoes is guarded by things that remember the stone as well. They do not follow the Watcher. They follow the memory of the old protector. Tom looked around carefully. What are they? Myra answered with a low, steady voice. They are not harmful if you stay calm. They are shadows of what once lived here. They appear when the stone passes near them. Do not fear them. Fear feeds them. Calm keeps them quiet. Tom felt a shiver, but he nodded. He trusted Mira now. She had guided him through danger and she understood the stone far more than he did. They reached a wide section in the pass where the cliffs opened slightly. The ground was flat and covered with light-colored dust. The glow of the stone cast a clear light across the area. That was when Tom saw movement on the cliff wall. A shape drifted across the stones. It looked like a dark outline of a person walking sideways along the wall. It had no face and no clear form. It moved like a shadow that did not belong to any body. That Star stopped and snorted nervously. Tom held the reins tight. Myra placed a hand on Tom's arm. This is one of the echoes. Do not turn away. Do not rush. Just keep a slow pace. They do not mean harm unless the stone senses fear. Tom took a deep breath. The shadow drifted and slid across the stone wall. Another shadow appeared near it. Then another. They moved like memories replaying an old story. Tom guided Star forward slowly. The shadows did not touch him. They kept their distance but watched the glow of the stone with interest. Their movements matched each hoofstep. The pass filled with quiet shapes that flowed along the walls on both sides. Tom tried to stay calm. Myra stayed silent and steady behind him. After a few long moments, the shadows faded one by one until the walls returned to stillness. Tom released the breath he had been holding. I thought they were following us. They only watch, Mira said. They recognized the stone. Long ago they followed the old protector. Now they wait for the chosen one to pass them. Stared at the stone again. It was strange to think that a simple cowboy like him carried something that ancient beings watched and waited for. They moved deeper into the pass. The ground became rocky and uneven. The air felt warmer as if they were climbing upward toward another valley. The glow of the stone grew stronger. Myra pointed ahead. We are close. Tom looked and saw a faint light around a bend. It was not from the stone. It was coming from further ahead. They reached the bend and stepped into a wide open chamber formed by natural cliffs. The ceiling above was broken enough for the moon to shine through. The ground was smooth and flat. At the center stood a tall stone pillar shaped like a narrow tower. Tom stopped Star. Mira got down from the saddle and walked toward the pillar. This is the heart of the pass, she said quietly. The old protector once stood here. He used the stone to seal the Watcher in the hills. The seal grows weak over time. That is why the Watcher woke when the stone woke. But the stone holds the power to strengthen the seal again. Tom dismounted and walked toward the pillar with the stone in his hand. What do I do with this? Mira answered. Place the stone on the top of the pillar. It will show you what must happen next. Tom stepped up to the pillar. The top was flat and shaped like a shallow bowl. He placed the silver stone inside the bowl. The moment he let go, the stone began to glow brighter. Lines of light spread across the pillar. The air filled with a low hum that vibrated through the chamber. Mira stepped back. Tom watched as the stone lifted an inch into the air. A beam of pale light shot upward from it and touched the broken ceiling. The light rose into the sky through the opening and continued into the night. Tom felt the ground shift slightly under his boots. The cliffs around them echoed with a deep sound like distant thunder. Myra looked up. The seal is waking again. The Watcher will feel it. It will try to break free before the seal closes. Tom clenched his fists. Can it reach us? Here Mira shook her head. Not with the stone awake, but it will try to shake the hills. It will try to break the land. We must stay near the pillar until the stone completes its work. Tom nodded. A strong tremor shook the chamber. Rocks fell from the cliffs. Star whinnied in fear. Tom ran to her, placed both hands on her neck, and kept her calm. Mira called out, "Stay steady. The tremors will pass as soon as the light reaches its peak." The beam grew brighter. The hum grew louder. The ground shook again. Tom looked up as the light touched the highest point of the cliffs. Then everything went silent. The stone dropped gently back onto the pillar and rested without movement. Myra stepped forward and touched the pillar with her hand. The seal has been strengthened. But the Watcher will not stop. It knows the one chosen by the stone is alive. It'll try again. Tom picked up the stone. It pulsed with a warm, steady glow. Mira looked at him calmly. The real challenge begins now. The Watcher will not give up until it is stopped forever. Tom held the stone close to his chest and nodded slowly. He was ready for whatever came next. Morning light touched the cabin slowly as Tom opened his eyes. For a moment he lay still, trying to understand the strange quiet around him. His body felt heavy, but his mind was calm. The cabin no longer felt dark or tense. Instead, it felt warm. It felt peaceful. The strange light from the night before was gone. Yet the air still held a soft glow, as if something good had settled over the place. Tom sat up and looked at the two children sleeping beside him. Their small faces looked relaxed. They had no fear now. Their hands rested close to his arm as if they trusted him completely. The boy, Sam, breathed softly, and the girl, Leela, held the blanket with a gentle grip. Tom felt a new sense of responsibility rise in his chest. These two young souls had no one else. They were now under his care. He gently nudged them awake. Sam blinked and rubbed his eyes. Leela sat up, still sleepy, but she smiled when she saw Tom. She did not speak, but her eyes showed comfort. Tom returned the smile and stood up. He moved to the cabin door and opened it. Cool morning air rushed inside. Outside, Star was grazing quietly near the trees. She lifted her head and shook her mane when she saw him. The land looked brighter and safer than it had last night. The strange weight that once hung over the area had disappeared. Tom stepped outside and breathed deeply. He looked back at the cabin. Last night it had been a place of fear and mystery. Now it looked like a simple wooden shelter with nothing harmful inside. Whatever had held the cabin for years had left after the warm light filled it. Tom did not understand everything that had happened, but he felt sure of one thing. The darkness was gone forever. He walked back inside and helped the children gather the few things they had. The wooden chest that once held the strange glowing stones now looked empty and harmless. The stones were gone. It was as if they had never been there. Tom touched the inside of the chest and felt cool wood. No warmth, no energy, no mystery. Sam stepped beside him and spoke in a soft voice. He asked Tom what had happened to the stones. Tom thought for a while. He chose gentle words. He explained that the stones had done what they were meant to do. They had given safety. They had brought peace. And now their work was finished. Sam nodded with understanding. Leela rested her hand on the lid of the chest as if she was saying goodbye to it. Tom closed the chest and stepped away. He could not help thinking about the journey ahead. He needed to take the children somewhere safe. They needed a home, food, clothes, and a peaceful life. Tom had spent his life riding from town to town, doing work wherever he could find it. He had never stayed in one place for long. But now his path had changed. He had a new purpose. After preparing Star and making sure the cabin was secure, Tom guided Sam and Leela outside. Sam held Tom's hand and looked toward the open land with hope. Leela walked quietly on his other side. They were ready to leave the cabin behind. Tom placed the children on Star first, making sure they sat safely. Then he climbed onto the saddle behind them. He held the reins with one hand and gently placed the other around the children so they would not fall. Star began walking slowly across the grass. The sun rose higher, washing the land with golden light. As they rode, Tom felt the children lean against him. The trust they showed made him feel stronger. He knew the road ahead would not be easy. He would need to find a town and settle down. He would need to work hard to give the children a good future. But for the first time in a long time, Tom felt ready for that challenge. Hours passed as they crossed plains and small hills. Sam asked questions about life outside the cabin. He wanted to know about towns, markets, horses, and people. Leela listened without saying a word, but her face showed interest. Tom answered kindly, telling them about the world he knew. His stories made the children smile. By noon they reached a place where trees lined a narrow trail. Tom slowed star and listened to the sounds around them. Birds sang softly. Leaves danced in the light wind. It was peaceful. As they moved deeper into the trail, Tom noticed faint smoke rising behind a hill. It was the kind of smoke that came from a small village. Tom felt a wave of relief. He guided Star forward, and soon they reached a group of wooden houses. People were moving about, tending to work. A group of children played near a water well. When they saw Tom and the young ones with him, they stopped and stared with curiosity. An older man stepped forward. He had white hair and a strong posture. His name was Ben. He asked Tom who he was and where he had come from. Tom explained that he had been lost in the plains and found the children in an old cabin far from any road. He explained gently that the children had no family left. Ben listened carefully. Instead of doubt or fear, the man's face showed sympathy. He called his wife Mira, who had kind eyes and a warm voice. She came close and greeted Sam and Leela. Her gentle tone made Leela relax immediately. Mira placed her hand on Leela's shoulder and smiled at Tom. Ben invited them to stay in the village until Tom decided his next step. Tom felt grateful. The village had a peaceful feeling. The people looked kind. It felt like a place where Sam and Leela could grow without fear. Tom helped the children down from the horse, and they followed Myra to a house filled with light and warmth. Inside, the children were given food, clean water, and soft blankets. They ate quietly at first, but soon Sam began to smile as he tasted the warm bread. Leela sat near the fire and held a small wooden toy Mira offered her. Tom watched from the doorway, feeling a sense of comfort settle over him. Ben walked beside Tom and spoke softly. He told Tom that the village always welcomed those who needed help. He said Tom could stay and work in the village if he wished. There was always something to do. The village could use a skilled rider and a strong worker like him. Tom nodded. He felt something inside him open. He realized he wanted to stay. He wanted to give Sam and Leela a stable life. He wanted to belong somewhere. Evening came. Tom sat near the children as they rested by the fire. They looked peaceful and happy. He thought about the strange glow from the cabin. He thought about the stones that had brought light in the night. He thought about the energy that had filled the cabin. He did not understand everything, but he knew one clear truth. Whatever had happened had led him to this moment, to these children, and to this village. It was not chance. It was not accident. It felt like the cabin had guided him toward a new purpose. Tom looked at Sam and Leela. They were safe now. They had a new beginning, and so did he. For the first time in many years, Tom felt that he was exactly where he needed to be. The cabin in the middle of nowhere had changed his life. It had given him two young souls to protect. It had given him a reason to stay, to build, to hope. As night settled over the village, Tom closed his eyes with a calm heart. He knew that tomorrow would bring new steps and new challenges, but he also knew he would not face them alone. He had Sam and Leela by his side. He had the village, and he had a new path that felt bright and honest. The cabin was behind him now, but its gift would stay with him forever.